Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with great artist Bad Day. Yes, everybody has their bad moments. Well, this is a particularly interesting one, and actually a rather sad one. It is Bernard Herrmann conducting the Charles Ives Second Symphony on Decca, which I was listening to. Remember these things? They had these, like those wonderful sanitized for your protection toilet seat straps that you found in hotel rooms. They put these things on. It was ridiculous. And remember, even stupider, this was with Sony, when they started wrapping their CDs in plastic, and then they would put this thing on over the plastic anyway. Even though when you took the plastic off, the whole thing came off, it was completely useless. Anyway, that was just a little bit of CD history. But this is now on Weekend Classics. And I have suggested that Decca do a Bernard Herrmann box, because not a not film music box. He wasn't really very good as a conductor, bottom line. And he wasn't really very good as a conductor of not film music, even though he was a great artist by any definition. But he wanted desperately to be a conductor, and he loved, he made recordings of the things he cared about most. And he was a huge promoter of Charles Ives from his earliest period, back in the 1930s, and when he was with CBS Radio and whatnot. He was friendly with Ives, personally. And it was a labor of love to do this, because he particularly despised Leonard Bernstein's recording, because first of all, he hung on to the last note, that distant dun. Well, what Ives wrote is just like an eighth note. It's that's the way it ends. And so Bernstein took some liberties. The other thing is that Ives had gotten and rediscovered actually, the original manuscript with Ives' emendations. And so he wanted very, very much to record that version. And actually, there's some things in here that you don't hear, I don't think, in any of the other recordings, even though nowadays we have critical editions and all that stuff. There's constant bass drum throughout Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean, for example, that I don't hear anywhere else. So there's some things. But the problem with the performance, and it really is a problem, is that Bernard Herrmann was noted as a conductor, maybe because he wasn't a very good one, for taking music at slow tempos. We heard that when we talked about his recording of The Planets, which was as wonderful, sensitive attention to orchestral color, to the vertical element. He was a chord guy, but it's slow, it's imprecise. Well, here, it's more precise. I mean, I think the London Symphony Orchestra was in better shape. Herrmann was very, very pleased with how the recording went. And he said that he had a good time. The orchestra had a good time, probably because they could have sight read the thing at that speed. But, and Ives himself is so quirky. There are moments where, just from the very opening of the Allegro, da 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 dum ba da 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 dum ya da 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 da. Everything is slightly akimbo rhythmically, and at that tempo, you really do actually hear the strange little rhythmic quirks and uncoordinated, orchestral layers. I mean, it comes out very, very well, because the tempos are very slow. But at the end of the day, it's just a slog. Because the symphony also has a lot of very slow music. Remember, you've got a big, long, slow introduction. I mean, it's like 10 minutes or 5 minutes. And then you've got the Allegro, which is only intermittently quick. And then you've got a slow movement, which is just slow. And then you've got to return to the slow introduction. And then finally, you get to the finale, which is pretty zippy. Although it slows down for lyrical reflection in many places. And so you really need to keep the piece moving. I mean, movement is a problem with this symphony. And it's an issue that Herrmann totally refuses to deal with. Doesn't care. Even the very ending, when Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean, comes, da 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 da. You're just like, oh my God. It's so slow and heavy, but you hear lots of orchestral detail. It's similar, I think, although, in if you're making comparisons to something like the Klemperer Mahler Seventh, which is also just excruciatingly slow, ridiculously slow. And yes, the slowness does allow, an unprecedented amount of detail to manifest. But at the end of the day, taken as a whole, as a conception of the work, it's a snooze fest. It's really hard to endure, and and it makes Ives sound. Oh, look, my little thingy's coming off. Oh, there it goes. Remember, these plastic things came off, but the sticky gunk that they have underneath stays on the thing forever. Ugh. But it just seems to me that it makes Ives sound even a little bit more amateurish than he should have. But part of the biggest problem with this performance, and the reason it fits in the Great Artist Bad Day universe, is that back when it was issued, originally, it was the only show in town after Bernstein's recording. And for that reason, people were very open to alternative approaches. People who didn't like Bernstein, people who just wanted to hear something else, people who loved Ives and didn't care how many versions there were, how good they were. It was a Phase 4 recording. It was on Decca. Herrmann was, noted for his passionate devotion to Ives. All of those things stood in its favor. And we wanted desperately to love it. We tried very hard. We gave it every opportunity, every benefit of the doubt to be a great performance. But now we have a critical edition of the Second Symphony. We have many recordings of the Second Symphony. We have, at least half a dozen, probably, very good performances of the Second Symphony, all of which are at least up to speed. And so, however much goodwill we had towards this performance, it doesn't hold up to the best of what's available today. It simply does not. You can have the clarity, you can have all of the color and interest of this performance in performances that just sound much, much better and are better played and better recorded and don't have the quirks that Herrmann inflicted on his version of the score. And that's why, although he was undoubtedly a great artist, in retrospect, this turns out to have been a bad day. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.